The Maple Leafs are rolling through the first 20 games of the year. Let's reflect on the run at the quarterway mark and tee up Sunday's game against the Utah Hockey Club. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. You're thinking about going down to the game on Sunday, use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL, get $20 off that purchase. What's going on, Dave? How are we feeling on a Friday?
Feeling pretty good. You know, this is it's crazy to watch. I don't know if anybody watched that Thursday night football game and seeing all that snow happening in Cleveland. It's like
I'm not ready for that yet. I'm not ready for that, man. I'll be honest. I am not ready for it. I know some people around these parts, they're excited because that means it's, a day closer to ODR season, but I ain't about it, brother. There's a reason why I go cruising 2 or 3 times a year. I get away from the snow. I'm not ready for it. I'm not. I really am not.
Yeah, it's the harsh reality. We're fortunate it hasn't happened yet, but it's coming. It's definitely coming.
It's definitely coming. Jameis Winston, the Browns eating W's. The Maple Leafs have been eating a lot of W's lately also. They've won 6 of their last 7 games, and they're through 20 games of the season. So basically at the quarterway mark of the year. And dude, how quick has that happened? Like, I feel like they just dropped the puck on the season like last week, and all of a sudden we're 20 games in and at the quarter mark of the season. It's kind of wild.
Yeah, it is kind of wild. I mean, we're already almost in December. Sometimes we say the regular season goes slow. It feels like this one is kind of going at a nice pace. It hasn't felt like it's dragged yet.
Yeah, and I think it's because it's different, right? Like, this is a far different season than we've had the last 5 years of the Sheldon Keefe era. So there was a lot of excitement, and it seems like every night you're kind of learning new things about this team, and your expectations are differing from night to night. So maybe that has us invested in the regular season a little bit more than typically. I don't know if there's any validity to that. You guys can let me know down below. I think that could possibly have something to do with the fact that things are going well. And I mean, also, it's just been good hockey, especially these last couple of weeks, right? We're watching a team play a playoff style puck, which is exactly what you want to see. So we're 20 games in. Why don't we kind of dissect and break down what has happened over the course of the first 20 games. So we'll let you know, who's leading the team in what category, the team MVP to this point, biggest surprises, disappointments, and we'll give them an overall grade as well, Dave. So through 20 games, the Toronto Maple Leafs are 12-6-2 for 26 points on the year and are number 1 in the Atlantic Division based on points, number 2 based on points percentage, but top of the table, top of the standings after 20 games. That's pretty solid. I'm not gonna lie. I didn't think the Leafs would be there at this point. I thought they'd be close, obviously, but I thought they might take a little bit to, understand the new systems, and it might take a little bit to get going, but they really have played some sound hockey early on and find themselves at the top of the division.
Well, that's it, right? New coach, playing a more defensive game. Offense, how are they going to generate offense, right? How is the goaltending going to look? You think middle of the pack, maybe second, third in the Atlantic like they usually are. See them at the top of the Atlantic, I'm surprised.
Yeah.
Like, some people might say it's not surprising. Like, Florida was off to such a blazing start that it's just like, looks like they're going to give themselves a pretty sizable advantage. And the Leafs is just, especially with Austin Matthews out, they found a way to just keep on rolling. They're taking advantage of some, matchups that have favored them for sure, but they've they put themselves in a good position right now.
They have, but you know what? They've also had some tough matchups over the course of this stretch without Matthews. Like it started with a game against Boston, right? They blanked the Bruins 4-0 there, and then obviously these last three games have been pretty tough. They beat the Washington Capitals, who were one of the hottest teams in the NHL at the time they played them, right? They beat McDavid's Oilers 4-3 at home, and then they just blanked the Golden Knights. So that's four pretty quality teams. The Senators, you got to give your flowers to them. They're playing decent hockey. They're at least in the mix this year for a playoff spot. So they beat some pretty formidable opponents, right? They beat the Jets. They're the first team to beat the Jets this year and the only team through their first 15 games to actually do so. Remember that great game against the Tampa Bay Lightning? So there've been some big victories for sure for the Maple Leafs, some staple wins, I guess, early on in the year that you can kind of hang your hat on and say, hey, there was some good hockey that was played here by Toronto. So through the first 20 games, the Maple Leafs have a goal differential of plus 11, which is interesting because you would think it'd be a bit higher, but the team has actually, I don't want to say that they've lacked scoring because they kind of like they're averaging just over 3 goals a game. But we've come to expect a little bit more than that.
Yeah.
But they're still plus 11 in the goal differential category because they're playing great defensively and they're getting outstanding goaltending. Team save percentage, by the way, 913, which is the fourth best in the NHL.
Like you don't expect that really. Like you it's far, like the Leafs have always been like a middle of the pack, like average goaltending,
Middle to
right?
bottom, middle to bottom.
Yeah, never in the top, right? They
Yeah.
they haven't been in that top part where they're like, in like they got the best among like they're among the best goaltending tandems in the league, right? Like it's obviously it looks a little different when it's a tandem versus one goaltender, but it works out so much better, right? Like and that you look at the teams that have gone on these big playoff runs or these teams have had a lot of success. If you get good goaltending, it usually does shore up a lot of potential. When you're not off, your offense isn't firing on all cylinders. Your goaltending, usually when you have good goaltending and defense, that counteracts it a little bit. Almost like there's
Yes.
a balance
Yes.
that they've been trying to get.
Well, you need that balance, right? Like come the playoffs, you are going to need it because goal scoring it comes at a premium at that point, right? You don't win a lot of games 6-4, 6-5. You got to grind out those 2-1, 3-2 wins, and they're showing that they can do that, or at least have. I mean, they've got to prove that they can do it come April, May, June.
Yep.
Tons of times we've talked about how it looks like they've changed in November. Then come, playoffs, the same thing happens. So I'm not fully bought in, but it looks pretty good to this point. But again, still do have to kind of wait and see how it all looks come playoff time. Your goal scoring leader to this point through the first 20 games for the Maple Leafs is none other than William Nylander. He's got 13 tucks on the year. Now, the funny part is, even if Matthews was healthy, it's a good chance that Nylander still would be your leader through 20 games because even prior to the injury, Matthews wasn't really scoring at an elite rate. And prior to him going out, he only had 5 goals through 13 games. So yeah, Nylander's been the better goal scorer, the more prolific goal scorer to this point in the season, which I think is a true testament to what he's become for this team and how much of an elite goal scorer that he's become. He's on pace for 53 goals this year. He's been outstanding and hopefully can continue.
It's been so with Matthews not in the lineup, like he has stepped up. It's I think it's also just important for the narrative when he had signed the contract and his numbers dipped last year. It's good to see that it's back to what we expect. Now the question is, can it sustain itself, right? Because he went on a pretty almost identical start last year. The question is, can it continue? That'll be the big question for Nylander.
Yeah, can he remain consistent throughout the season? He did for the most part of last year, and then a dip
Yeah.
came towards the end of the season. Can he remain and keep it going all year long? Assist leader, Mitch Marner, 20 apples on the year for Mitchy Marnsauce, which is the exact person you expected to be leading this team in assists. He's also your points leader at 26 points through 20 games. What's that an average for? Is he on pace to break 100 finally? I mean, this guy's been just touching up on 100 for his entire career, but has not quite been able to do it. 26 divided by 20, 1.3 times 82, 106. He's on pace finally to break it through the first 20 games, on pace for 106 points for Mitch Marner. And, that's without Matthews for a good portion of that game. That's with the power play being quite trash for the first half of that 20 game stretch too. So, both of those things come back and get going. I mean, you could see Marner even take a bigger leap in terms of his points. And we've always known that Marner was special and he could produce at an elite rate. And hopefully he can continue to do that all year long.
Well, that's it, right? For him last year, it was health. You want to see him stay healthy. You want to see and also, again, you want to see the production can continue because this is an important year for him, and there's a lot of pressure on him. Again, the contract stuff is being brought up again.
Yep.
It's not. I mean, if
really quick, would you be entertaining an extension at this moment, or if you were the Leafs, or would you still be holding off?
I'd be holding off. Like at this point, he's made it clear he wants to wait. Fine, like let's let it wait until the off season.
Yeah, didn't he say that he'd be willing to talk throughout the season though, or am I misremembering?
I don't think he like. I think he'll let his agent, if like the Leafs,
his agent, right? Yeah, not him, but his agent. Yeah,
but I don't think he's going to prioritize like every day talking about it. And frankly, I don't expect him to talk about it because he made it clear he wasn't going to talk about it.
Right, 100%. Penalty minutes leader Ryan Reeves. So he hasn't, which is hilarious because he doesn't have a fight yet this year. Yet still is leading this team with 23 penalty minutes. Domi 21 penalty minutes. Team's been way too penalized. We've talked about that ad nauseum. That's kind of been the biggest knock on the group at this point, is the fact that they've been far too penalty happy to this point in the year. But luckily, an 84.5% penalty kill, which is good for 7th in the NHL. And it's been a big reason for why they've been able to win a lot of games, especially lately. And the power play finally getting going, Dave. It was under 10% when Austin Matthews got injured. It's now doubled and is 20%, which is good for 13th in the NHL. So, it's not a big issue anymore. Last 7 games without Austin Matthews, 36% success rate on the power play. Again, I can't quite explain why that is. Your best goal scorer leaves, and all of a sudden you start scoring goals at 5-on-4. I couldn't tell you why. Hopefully it just continues and he can jump on a moving train when he comes back, which could possibly be next Wednesday. Doubtful to be Sunday, but could be next Wednesday against the Florida Panthers. All right. Let's come back on the other side. Let's go through our team MVPs, biggest surprises, biggest disappointments, and then we will round it all out with an overall grade for the team through the first 20 games of the year. And then we'll come back and we'll tee up Leafs and Hockey Club on Sunday. I'm Mike DiStefano with Dave Morassutti. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes it getting tickets to your favorite events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't even have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. The Gametime Picks curates and makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater events, whatever you're looking to get tickets to. They've got all-in pricing with no surprise fees at checkout. They've got great seat views, which gives you a panoramic view from your seat in the app app before you even buy it. And best yet, they've got the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. You're looking to go to the Leaf game this weekend against the hockey club, $20 off using the promo code LOCKEDONNHL. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. The Locked On Leafs podcast continues with Mike DiStefano and Dave Morassutti. We got new pods coming out to you each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. You can find us free and available on all podcast platforms and also up on YouTube. We're through the first 20 games of the season, Dave. The quarterway mark is officially here. So I thought it'd be a good time to kind of decompress and, talk about what we've seen through the first 20 games. And look, it's a very new team, right? There was a lot of turnover on the ice and off the ice. We got a brand new coach and Craig Berube in tow, which brought brand new systems. And it's been a much different product this year. We'll get to the overall grade of what that product has looked like in just a moment. But before we do, let's hand out a quick award. MVP. Who's been the team's MVP through the first 20 games, in your opinion?
It didn't start off this way, but it's he's put himself right into the conversation. That's Mitch Marner.
Yes, sir.
He's led the charge with Matthews out. He's, putting up the points. He's still playing his role in the PK. We haven't
defending
seen him
his ass off too, like true 200-foot
Yeah.
Selke candidate guy.
Yeah, he hasn't shied away with Matthews out. He has stepped up.
Mhm.
And that's something I think people have to appreciate. I know there's always going to be people who have their opinions on Mitch Marner, but I don't know where this Leafs team would be right now if Marner's not doing what he's doing right now.
Yeah, I mean, if he didn't take the bull by the horns and help this team throughout the last 7 games, I mean, they could have lost a bunch of them. I mean, that Edmonton game, Mitch Marner, gets the game tying goal on the power play, and then also gets the game winner as well. Scored the game winning goal. What was the one they took? The Washington. He got the game tying goal, took it to overtime. And then he got the overtime winner against Edmonton the next night. So Marner's been fantastic for this team. I completely agree. He's really taken on a big role of this group, and he had to. Someone had to step up and kind of take on that leadership role. I would say the only other guy who I think could possibly be in that conversation, could Anthony Stolarz get like a consideration here, like a runner-up type of consideration? Because look at where we were at the beginning of the year. Kind of an unknown situation with Anthony Stolarz. Played well last year in limited fashion with the Florida Panthers. But all of a sudden, game 1 rolls around, and what's supposed to be the 1A in Joseph Woll gets injured, and he can't go. And Anthony Stolarz gets thrusted into action and becomes the team's number 1 goalie for the first, couple of weeks of the season. And he's been stellar, man. He has been unbelievable to start the season. He truly, truly has. You look at the year, he's got a .927 save percentage, a .218 goals against, and of the 12 starts that he's made, 10 of them have been recognized as quality starts. So Anthony Stolarz has been the backbone of this team for a lot of the nights. A lot of nights here. 9.4 goals saved above average. Just great number, obviously, for Stolarz. So I want to give him some love there as maybe a runner-up for MVP.
Yeah, he's definitely deserving of that honor, because especially early on, there's a lot of concern with Joseph Woll being injured. Could Anthony Stolarz even step up and play that role? And he showed, no, more than capable of doing that. Don't have to worry about me. And like that appeared to be very valuable, because it's one of those things where the Leafs I don't think they could have afforded having subpar goaltending, to start the year, considering it was the big talk was about how they couldn't get offense. And a lot of the reason why it wasn't a huge deal right away is because Anthony Stolarz was playing like out of his mind.
Yeah. He was great,
So
man. And he's been great. Like, it's just he hasn't really stopped. He's been consistently fantastic, like each and every night. It's
yeah.
been good to see, obviously, from him. All right. He probably could have also got nominated in our next category, but biggest surprise through the first 20 games.
Biggest surprise. I think like for me, Oliver Ekman Larson has been very surprising because we saw that deal and we're like, I mean, again, I won 20 game sample size. Maybe we have to not say that the deal is a great deal, but for what we've
I
seen
think it was
so
the
far,
term, right? Like, that's what
yeah,
kind of spooked people a little bit. It wasn't
yeah,
necessarily, what you're gonna get in year 1 and 2. It was like, well, year 3, year 4, like, what's it gonna look like at that point?
yeah,
But through the first 20 games, looks like a bargain.
it does. Especially, we weren't sure what role he was going to play. You put him with Morgan Riley, which I did not. If you threw out the different defensive combinations, I don't think I would have envisioned him being with Morgan Riley
You know
for
what's
a good
funny?
stretch.
Yeah, like, I remember I threw that out there at one point when we were going through and it wasn't necessarily because I thought that would be a good pairing. It was McCabe and Tanev would be a perfect shutdown pair. But then where does that
Mhm,
leave Riley, right? Where does
mhm.
that leave OEL? And that's how I came to that conclusion. And in like one of the many lineup iterations that I, wrote down throughout the summer. And I thought to myself, this maybe could work. Like OEL did play the right side at times in Vancouver, I recall. I'm like, possibly we'll see if they want to, maybe an offensive zone face-off where they need just a little bit more offense, two puck moving guys. Maybe we get a chance to see it. And it did end up happening. But he's shown the ability to play both the left and the right because then even when Hakanpää came in, they slid him over to the left and he anchored a third pair. So like the way that he's been able to do everything asked of him, I think is what's been impressive. And he's kind of changed the way that he plays. And every good player kind of has to do it. Like TJ Brody had to do that at some point in his career. When he first
Mhm.
got to the NHL, there was after junior, first into the NHL, like this guy was he wasn't a offensive defenseman, but he was very offensively driven. And he had like 40 or 50 points his first year. He put up point
Yep.
numbers when he was in junior. And then he had to change his role and he became a defensive guy. Now, I'm not saying OEL is becoming a defensive guy, but he certainly is a much different player this year than he was when he was in Arizona or when he was in Vancouver.
Oh yeah.
And it kind of started last year in Florida, right? Where he was forced to play a third pair, forced to play, a different role, play much tougher, harder to play against. Like Paul Maurice coached him up and got the best out of OEL last year. And Craig Berube is doing the exact same thing. He's competing his butt off each and every night. And he's been fantastic. He's working hard. He's battling, in front of the net. He's winning puck battles behind the goal. He's stopping pucks. He's killing penalties. Like OEL is doing everything that's asked of him, and doing a lot more than I think anybody expected. So for me, he certainly has been the biggest surprise. But again, I'll give out one more honorable mention. Are you not surprised at how good of a season John Tavares is having? I feel like we're not talking about it enough.
No, and if somebody brought it up in our comments, I don't remember who it was, but shout out to the person in the comments who
Point per
uh
game,
right.
19 points in 19 games, 9 goals.
There's been some good Tavares support from the Locked On fans, I will say. And somebody put it on Twitter saying he's acting more like a captain now than when he didn't have the C. And I'm like, yes and no, but like what like I just
Well,
think the
maybe
pressure.
yesterday when he was going
Yeah,
after that was, captain like showed
yeah.
a little bit of P and V on that one play.
Yeah, but I think what I've appreciated from John Tavares is the pressure's not on. Like, there's not really that much pressure on him, and we were all talking about it. Everyone's talking about the decline, right? The decline he's going to be going on, and throwing, and he's been thrown around too. So with so many different line mates. One
Mhm.
time it's sometimes it's Pacioretty, sometimes it's Roberts, and then it's McMahon, and it's Nylander, and it hasn't phased him. He continues to produce. He's still really good on the draws. He's still dependable there. he's another one of those players where you have all these, injuries and players have been kind of up and down, and he's just been steady.
Well, and
Right.
again, since Matthews came out of the lineup, he's been one of those guys who's had to step up, right? Those 7 games, he's got 4 goals, 4 helpers, 8 points in 7 games. And what's most impressive about Tavares this season, and this is something that I've dogged him for a lot in the past. He gobbled up a lot of his production on the power play, and at 5-on-5 didn't do a whole lot. 15 of his 19 points have been at even strength. And that's not what we've seen over the last few years from John Tavares. So that's a very good sign. And again, hopefully he can continue through. There's still 62 more games of regular season action. Then we got an entire playoff, hopefully 4 deep rounds where he can play this way. But so far through 20, he deserves some accolades. It's been a bit of a surprise the way that he's been able to kind of bounce back and have a great start to the year.
Yeah, it's been super important for him going into a contract year. You don't want you want he truly does want to remain here. You can see, we've heard him talk about that, and he's embracing the role. He's embracing whatever role Craig Berube is giving him, and I think
Yeah.
that's important. And when you look at going into next year, I have no debate right now. As long as the salaries make sense, John Tavares should be back next year. Like, I don't think there was much of a debate about that.
Well, it slight debate. Now, obviously the contract is going to be the biggest deterrent, if depending on how much money he wants. If he wants to come back on a very team friendly deal, then yeah, I'm sure that makes sense. Especially if he goes through this season and there's no awkwardness surrounding the captaincy change, and if anything, it seems to be alleviating stress, and he's playing looser out there. I don't know, or you know what it is too. I think Tavares, the game's slowed down and it's a heavier style of play, obviously, in a Craig Berube system. I think Tavares just fits the system a lot better than he did Sheldon Keefe, right? Like, I think that's also part of it. So going forward, yeah, hopefully that could be the case if he can, stay being aggressive and playing this well. All right, biggest disappointment to this point, Dave.
I mean, it has to be Nick Robertson.
Does it have to be?
It is Nick Robertson. Like, I don't think there's any doubt about that.
I have one other player that I'll throw into the mix here that I actually thought it was ahead of Nick Robertson, but sell me on Nicky Bobby. Go ahead.
A lot of the talk, this is a guy that's going to step up, provide some secondary scoring. He has 1 goal. 1 goal this year. And yes, I know he hasn't been playing every night. I understand he's not playing on the power play. But you got, if he's not scoring, he's one of those players that has to be doing something else. And that's another thing I haven't really seen. And then you just had the other night, Minton and Grabank can come in and instant. Now, I guess I'm not going to say because these guys have 1 game, it pushes Nick Robertson down. But that excitement that those 2 guys brought, it makes you, if I'm a Nick Robertson, I'm getting a little worried about my spot in the lineup, because if those guys continue to play well, that's his ice time that's going.
Yeah, and Pacioretty won't be gone too long. He's been out for a few weeks now. He should be returning, in the next month or so. So there's another spot in the lineup that will be up for grabs. Domi's got to come back. Matthews going to come back, and there's going to be a bit of a roster crunch. There was a name there that I mentioned just a moment ago that I thought was the biggest disappointment, and that was one Max Domi.
He was the other one I was thinking
Talk
of.
about Nicky Bobby. How many goals does he have?
1.
How many does Max Domi have?
He does not have a goal. Yes,
he does not have a goal. He doesn't even have a point in the last 13 games. Now, he's obviously injured right now and missed the last game, and that is what it is. He will be eligible to play Sunday, I believe, if he is healthy and ready to go.
Yeah.
But you go pointless in 13 games. You just signed a 4-year deal. Up what do you get? 3.25, 3.5, 3.75, something like that. Like just under $4 million a year. You got to give us a goal through 20 games here. You can't go scoreless on us, pal, because he's another guy. He's not known for his defensive prowess, right? He's got to be making plays, and he hasn't been doing a whole lot of that. He's got 6 assists. That's it. 6 assists, 0 goals. Domi's got to be better than that for me. And he's not even, I don't even think he's fought yet. He hasn't been like super physical. To me, Domi's been a little complacent to start the season. And was there a fight?
It might have been one, or but it's not to what we expect.
Yeah. Either way,
he was like next on my list. I just felt I just saw a big opportunity for Nick Robertson, and he just hasn't grabbed that opportunity yet. Max Domi, yeah, I feel like, but he was off to a slow start last year, and eventually he figured it out. At least there's something there for Max Domi to make me think that he can turn things around. I know it's tough right now. I'm sure the injuries played a factor.
He fought Gergensons in that Tampa game.
Yeah. So I do remember there was at least one fight. But yeah, no, he needs to pick it up. I'm not gonna make any excuses for Max Domi either. He needs to pick it up. And I wonder when he does come back. Hopefully it's not at the center. I think he needs to go to the wing.
Yeah,
too.
and he's got to use it as a reset. Has to use this week off as a reset and then come back and get going. Because what he's done to this point, unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable.
For him, it has been. And again, we saw some good things in the preseason that made us think that he could, put himself into a role. And again, he's one of those players that just, once the regular season has come around, it just hasn't looked good for him.
Really quickly, just give me a letter. Overall grade through the first 20 games of the season.
I'll go A-.
I'll go B plus.
I was like in the B plus A- range just because they're top of the Atlantic right now, and there's a lot more good than bad.
There is a lot more good than bad, which is why I think I gave him the B plus. But there's been a couple of games where you're just like, what the hell are you guys doing? Like that Sens game last week, like that was a tough loss that they took. A couple of games against St. Louis where they just didn't even put their equipment on. It felt like that Columbus game they lost 6-2. There's been a couple games, a couple of nights where it's like, what is going on here? Austin Matthews is his injury and him being slow. The power play, the first half was just terrible and abysmal and just a snooze to watch. So that's why I gave him a B plus. Not quite an A minus, but a B plus because it's been solid all around. And hey, they're still at the top of the division table right now.
Yeah.
So.
No,
all
for
righty.
Sure.
All right. On the other side, we will quickly tee up Utah Leafs Sunday, not Saturday, Sunday night. I'm Mike DiStefano with Dave Morassutti. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NHL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NHL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com today to join. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the Locked On Network. The Locked On Leafs podcast continues with Mike DiStefano and Dave Morassutti on a Friday, and no game tomorrow. I quickly realized that earlier in the week that we had a free Saturday. Not very often the Maple Leafs get the Saturday off. Do you know why they have the Saturday off, Dave?
Well, I know why they can't play at home.
Our guy, Paisano Sebastian Maniscalco, is in town. I wish I got tickets, man. I love it. I've seen him live 3 times. Funny man.
I'm keeping an eye on Gametime for potential last minute deal.
That's the play. Keep an eye on Gametime. Use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL. Get $20 off those tickets. Keep an eye.
It's a good time.
Oh, he's so funny, dude. Like I said, I've seen him 3 times. Bust a gut each and every time. But the next night, Utah Hockey Club comes to town for the very first time, taking on the Maple Leafs. Let's just throw up the game preview and kind of get right to it so we can get into the nitty-gritty quickly. But the Maple Leafs are looking to win their 4th in a row, taking on the Utah Hockey Club. They're not 11-5-2. That's a mistake. I think they're 8. What are they? 7,
Yeah,
8,
you
3.
put the I realized after you put the well, what team did they leave?
Vegas. It was
The
Vegas'
Vegas
record.
record in
Yeah, I
there.
forgot to change it, but they're 7, 8, and 3. The rest is correct though. The rest of the stats are correct. Toronto's got the special teams advantage, which is not typical or hasn't been typical this year. But they've got the better power play. Utah just a 13% power play and just a 75% penalty kill. So like we're talking, how can Toronto win this game? What are some of the keys? I mean, flex your muscles on the special teams, right? Kill off those power plays that they're struggling on and make sure that you finish on that power play that's pretty red hot, 34% over the last 7 games against a 75% penalty kill. I think special teams will be a big factor in this game tonight.
Yeah, and Utah's coming off 3 straight losses. They
night.
got shut out by Boston.
Yeah, Boston stinks.
Yeah,
Doesn't that feel
fired
good
the
to say?
coach. Suck.
Yeah. Oh,
1-0 they lost. So I think what the Leafs, if I'm the Leafs right now, in the last 3 games, in their 3-game losing streak, they have scored two or fewer goals in each of them. They also have been shut out twice in the last 5 games.
yeah, they can't score.
They cannot score. So this is, I think, a matchup that favors this Leafs defense. We know that Utah, or the previous iteration, the Arizona Coyotes, have always given the Leafs fits, especially in Toronto.
Oh man, do you remember the stat? The Toronto Maple Leafs had not won a home game against the Coyotes since 2002. Does that carry over to Utah, you think?
Well, I mean, like it's the same. It's those
Yeah,
records.
but it's a different team, it's a different owner. I mean,
It's a cleansing moment right now, ladies and gentlemen. We have a chance to that's in the past. The Arizona.
That's what I'm asking you. That's what I'm asking you. Like, did that streak die with the Coyotes?
No, because somebody's bringing it up. It's gonna get brought up 1,000%.
Man, brutal. Okay, so we've talked a lot about like, oh, is this year different? They got to win this game. This is must win. This is must win, isn't it? To
Please
further prove that this year's different.
Yes,
Got to
with
beat
1,000% proof.
Utah, formerly Arizona Coyotes. Have to. Must win. Must win game. Game 21 of the year is must win. Basically a Stanley Cup on the line Sunday night.
I mean, the Stanley Cup was on the line for Ottawa last week. If you ask a lot of people. How's it going then since Ottawa? Sorry.
Yeah, not great. Not great. So, yeah, I like Toronto to win the game, though. I do. I think they've just been playing some really quality hockey, and it seems like they're winning a lot of the games that they should. You know what I mean? So, Berube has this team firing. Doesn't matter who's in the lineup. It's been next man up mentality, right? You get an injury to David Kampf, Max Domi goes down. Fraser Minton says, all right, I'll score a goal. No worries. I got one. I got you, boys. Scores the first goal of the game winner, actually, because they didn't score a goal. So I expect nothing but the same from Utah Hockey Club, that it can't score and has had troubles keeping pucks out of the net too. Like 3.44 goals against per game also. So the Leafs should be able to put up 3-4 goals, and they should be able to come away with the win. So that's what I'm expecting this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of funny though, like do you remember the Dylan Guenther hype in the first week of the season?
Yep.
Scored 5 goals first 3 games. I think he was first star of the week. It was,
remember,
it was all
here
rosy.
comes 40 to 50 goals for Dylan Guenther.
Oh yeah, and we're saying, oh, see, they were so smart to give him that contract and bet on him. Blah blah. He has 2 goals his last 15 games since. So he had 5 in his first 3, and just 2 goals in his last 15 since.
I'm gonna say that's not good.
Well, he might be due. He might score against Toronto. That's probably there's a good chance it could happen. Is there any former Coyotes or former Leafs playing on that team right now? Let me just quickly check. Because if we're on FanDuel, it just makes sense to always look and see if there's a team out there.
I mean, Alex Kerfoot.
Ooh, I could see a Kerfoot anytime goal. Could see it.
Carconi.
Yeah, Carconi barely counts. I don't even think he played a game for the Leafs. He was a Marley.
Yeah, but people bring that up anyways. But yeah. Alex Kerfoot.
Kerfoot's the guy to watch. Kerfoot is the guy to watch in that one. Jesus, Nick Bukestad's their number one center.
Nick, we'll get into this, I think, next week, but the talks of around trade targets right now, and Nick Bukestad's in that conversation, guys.
Nick Bukestad's been a Leafs trade target for 10 years, and it just has never ever happened. Maybe it'll happen. Maybe this is the year. Everything's different this year, right? Maybe this is the year they finally get Nick Bukestad on the team. All right. And one last actually quick note. There's an update on Alex Ovechkin, out 4 to 6 weeks with a broken tibia. Gutting news for any
or
hockey
fibula,
fan.
sorry.
Fibula. Yeah, right. Same thing. Same but different.
Bad leg injury.
A bone in the body has been fractured, and he will miss the next 4 to 6 weeks, putting that record in peril. I mean, I think he'll still get to the record. I meant for this season.
Mm-hmm.
A week ago, I was emphatic that it was going to happen this year. He's only 27 shy of the record now. And I was at the rate he was going. I'm like, dude, this guy might get there by the All-Star game by the time they take off for Four Nations. But 4 to 6 weeks, he's out. So probably won't see him until the new year now.
It's all your fault.
It's all my fault. Yeah, my bad, Ovi. My bad.
You're enemy number 2 in Washington behind Jack McBain right now.
I thought you were going to say enemy number 2 in Russia.
No.
All right. Before we get ourselves in trouble, let's put a halt to that conversation and let's end the podcast. That'll do it for us here today on the Locked On Leafs podcast. You can, I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs pod on all platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at _Morassutti, and follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. We'll be back with another episode for you guys on Monday. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the game on Sunday. Go Leafs, go. Beat the streak. Until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.